Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, there's something happening at the AHA Theater, everybody. You don't want to miss it. My name is Sasha Rabkin. I'm, as you can see on the screen, the Chief Strategy Officer at Equal Opportunity Schools. My colleague Jessica Paulson, who's over there, who you can't see, is going to be speaking tomorrow. Don't miss her speech at the same time, right here. I'm here to talk to you about how we can change our minds about the pipeline. There's a lot of talk in education about the fact that we have a pipeline problem, that we're not producing enough of a certain kind of student ready to excel in public schools. And what I want to try to get you to think differently about is to think more that we have a refinement problem, not a pipeline problem. The pipeline is producing exactly what the pipeline was designed to produce: inequity, racial disparities, lack of opportunity. And what our system needs is to think about how do we take the genius that we're receiving and refine it into even more and more dynamic genius. And that if we could do that, we could uncover what was talked about this morning, what's been talked about a lot here. We can uncover those who will change the world using data, using technology, using their voices. I work for Equal Opportunity Schools. We work across the country to desegregate advanced academic pathways in public high schools. How many people took an AP course when you were in high school? Right, so when you take an AP course, you end up at wonderful things like this. Direct causal relationship. No, I'm just kidding. But the reality is that for 98% of the AP and IB programs in the country, IB is International Baccalaureate, 98% of those programs don't represent the demographics of their school environment. They aren't enrolling even the students that are in their own building at the same rate that they're enrolling others. And those disparities fall along lines of race and income. Race first, income second. Black and brown students are nearly two times less likely to be enrolled in those courses than their white or Asian counterparts. And the idea is that that's because we have a pipeline problem, that they are not showing up at my high school ready for the incredible rigor that I have literally right across the hall. Some of you may remember public school hallways. That's what they look like. They're 20 feet wide. We talk about the tragedy of 20 feet, that there are students literally right across the hall from the education that they deserve. It's not that standard level courses are all bad. It's not that AP courses are all good. It's not that there's a magic formula happening some places, but the reality is that when you take rigorous courses in high school, you have more chance of going on to explore rigorous opportunities after high school. And when you do that, you have more opportunity of having gainful employment and being sent to a wonderful place like this. So in our own schools, there are students who are literally right across the hall. There's laws that were passed 60 years ago saying, as a country, we believe that everything should be integrated. And what we continue to do is insist that the materials, and I'm going to use that as a provocative way to say students, that the materials we're getting are deficient and the pipeline needs to be fixed. And again, what I want you to think is that we have a refinement problem, not a pipeline problem. We aren't equipped to handle what we're receiving as a public education system. And so just like if an oil refinery isn't equipped or a water treatment plant isn't equipped, what comes out the other side is not what it was designed to produce. This is an enrollment chart for the 380 public high schools in the country that we work with, showing their enrollment in AP STEM courses by race. There's a lot to notice in there. Number one thing you should notice is that it was built in Tableau. I'm not here just because I have really good ideas, although I think they're fine, but we use Tableau to do all of our work across the country. We are providing analytics to schools that they can't do on their own, because if you walked into a public high school today, it would look and feel and smell exactly as when you walked out of it when you were 18. We live in the same system that we had when I was in high school. In the late 80s and early 90s, I know I look young. We have the same system and the same refinement, even though the products that we're getting are significantly different. They're more diverse. They're more digital native. They have all of these things, and yet the system that we're refining them in is exactly the same. So this chart shows the AP STEM enrollment across the 380 schools we work, and you can see the obvious disparities. This shouldn't surprise anybody. Again, as I mentioned, 98% of the programs we work with are not representative of their school demographics. So we say that opportunity precedes achievement. There's a lot of talk about achievement dictating opportunity, that if you have the right tools, we'll give you the opportunities. But the reality is that when you factor in race and income, the vast majority of people don't get the opportunities that they deserve because the system can't handle that. So we are trying to flip that narrative to say that opportunity precedes achievement. All of us can remember the time when that opportunity came into our life. It could be an opportunity academically. It could be an opportunity for a relationship. It could be an opportunity for a job. Those things preceded what comes next. And yet we're expecting young people to somehow take advantage of a system that isn't providing them opportunities, prove to that system that it's worthwhile, and then finally get opportunities down the road. So pipelines produce what they're designed to produce. If you want oil, you build that pipeline. If you want water, you build that pipeline. You don't just assume water's coming out of an oil pipeline, and you don't assume oil's coming out of a water pipeline. But the one really important thing about a pipeline, and this is essential for thinking about public education, is that you don't build one without knowing what you want to get out of it. You don't start laying pipes in the ground and then wonder why the water's not coming. You don't stand at the oil refineries and wonder where it all went. You plan it out step by step. So yes, if we're being semantics, we have a pipeline problem. But the reality is that what we haven't done is we haven't done two things. We haven't, as a country, decided that we want educated, diverse people who can tackle the challenges of social and economic change. And we haven't decided that we can recognize that it is not the job of young people to conform to the expectations of the system. It's the job of the system to take them and embrace the genius that they bring and make them even better. And until we decide what we want the pipeline to produce, we're going to continue to assume that out of these pipelines will come things they were not designed for. In our work, we use student and staff surveys, and we take demographic enrollment and achievement data from public high schools, and we show them their data in new and compelling ways. We get asked a lot by our school partners, where'd you get this data? And they just had uploaded it to our system. It's their data. We're showing it to them in ways that they can't do themselves. It's probably a comment on them as much as us, but it's a very powerful thing to see data in real time. And we take student and staff surveys. So over the last few years, we've surveyed about 100,000 teachers. And the story that we tell ourselves in education is that these things matter a lot. Right? That's what defines our opportunities. Do you have the GPA? Did you pass the test? And did you take the class that's in the sequence before this one? And if you didn't, we have schools who literally take an Excel spreadsheet, all the GPAs, make a cutoff for advanced courses at 2.9, and anybody that has a 2.9 or below just doesn't get into that class. It's that simple. So we're sure that the pipeline needs to produce these three things. That's what we tell ourselves in education. But we've surveyed almost 100,000 teachers. And here's what they actually say when we ask them. Teachers that we surveyed are 3 times more likely. Teachers that we've surveyed are 3 times more likely to say that these things matter than those things. That what really determines success in advanced courses is growth mindset, perseverance, and motivation. Things that young people bring in abundance to school environments. They do not need a new pipeline to have a growth mindset, to persevere, and to have motivation. That is what drives people to do the things that they do. And so the reality is that if they're 3 times more likely, then the story starts to shrink into the background. The story we've been telling starts to become incredibly less compelling. And we can start to think about, what do we do with this material, not that material? What do we do with the fact that students have everything they need to succeed? That we as teachers are saying 3 times more likely that this predicts success, that this is what a student needs in my classroom. And yet, what still happens, because data isn't magic, let's not be fooled. What comes from data is information, and people are really good at ignoring information. No matter how pretty you make it, this country has ignored information in front of its face about injustice for 400 years, and it will continue to do so if we don't find ways to tell different stories with the data. So when the story starts to shift, what we find is that we have a refinement problem. We are getting genius, and as we just heard, for those of you that were here for the amazing presentation before us, what we're getting is genius, and what we're producing is a school-to-prison pipeline. So we're actually misdirecting the materials we get and sending them down the wrong path. Over the last 7 years, we've surveyed 1 million students across the country. 1 million individual students have taken our survey. We want to just give you a few of these data points to also illustrate how complex this can be. These were obviously not built in Tableau, because I've never built a Tableau dashboard, but I'm really excited to be at a Tableau conference, and I have a wonderful team that builds amazing dashboards, and they've changed my life. But I have to create what PowerPoint gives me. It was funny, come on, it's a Tableau conference. We can joke about PowerPoint here. And my screens don't move like this morning, I want that. So 88% of the 1 million students that we've surveyed want to go to college. Young people sitting in public schools today are not there assuming that they're going to go to prison, assuming they're going to be out of a job, assuming they're going to continue down whatever they were doing. We sit in high school as young people aspiring to college. Only 58% of those students say that their teachers hold them to high expectations. So when we survey these 1 million students, slightly more than half are saying, yes, my teachers hold me to high expectations. Of the teachers that we've surveyed, only 36% say that standard level courses in their school are challenging. Only 36% of the teachers we survey say the standard courses are challenging. So again, aspiring to college, not having expectations, and my teachers are over here, even they don't think the courses are challenging, and only 43% say that the standard courses prepare students for college. So again, we have this story that somehow we need to change what's happening to we need to change our students. And the reality is that we are all presiding over a system in which 60% of the students we survey say, I don't belong. I want to go to college. My courses aren't challenging. According to my teachers, only 15%. And we've looked for, like, I don't want to believe it, of the students we've surveyed say they feel challenged in high school. So you know what most people do when they see this data? The same thing you would do if somebody came in and said you weren't doing your job. They get really defensive. Because I don't want to see stuff that tells me I'm not doing my job. And I certainly don't want to see stuff that says I'm changing what's happening to the students that are coming in with genius. So what do? What we strive to do is to confront that inequities by making every single student visible in their building. That invisibility is a prerequisite for inequity. If people aren't visible, right, the invisible man, for a long time I thought the invisible man was invisible. Ralph Ellison's invisible man is not invisible, you just refuse to see him. So invisibility is a prerequisite for inequity. So usually, as I mentioned, what defines students' trajectory is the name and their color, the GPA, you can see, I think I have a pointer, look at that. A pointer, and your test scores, right? Things that are readily available to the system are what define your trajectory. And some of us are lucky enough to have all those things, and so it works out. But we know that it works out inequitably. We know that college is inequitably enrolled in, it's inequitably persisted in. We know that jobs in tech are inequitably given, that your name on a resume matters as much as your qualifications. So we know all of that stuff happens, and so what we're striving to do with our survey data and the other information that we have is fill in a 360-degree view of every student in the school building. So that the teachers can no longer say that it's that student's job to prove themselves. They can see everything they need to know about who this young man is. And I'll point out a couple. We asked Darian's teachers who are currently teaching him in his classes, is Darian showing potential for advanced courses? 3 of his 6 said yes. Information that nobody thought to ask. They just went on Darian's GPA and all the blank space. We're asking Darian some questions about himself and letting him write his own words. What does Darian think about what's happening in his building? We're talking about all the barriers and mindsets that he's indicating on our survey. So we're striving to combat the inequity, the idea that we don't know what we want to produce, with insisting that everybody be made visible, and then insisting that students who are otherwise qualified enroll in advanced courses in their following year. And we have an online tool to do that. We have the magic of Tableau to do all of those things. And we change the way people think about the fact that what we have wrong is the refinement process, not what the pipeline is delivering to us. We lack the capacity to invest in, to train, and to build the kind of refinement system that would actually create equitable learning environments. And until we do that, until we get out of the idea that the students are deficient and the system is whole, we will continue to produce the inequities that we have. And so what we want is for us to accept that the students are whole, the system is broken, and that if we can fix that system, the wholeness of those children will shine, they will be great, they will succeed, and we can start to build the schools of tomorrow, not just in the remnants of the past, but with a new vision for where we go, how we think about school, and how we think together about the idea of what we want our society to be, and who we expect it to be, and how we expect our people to be represented in that space. Thank you all for being here, and thanks for listening to our talk. We really appreciate it. Thanks to Andrea for organizing all these wonderful things. You all have a wonderful day.